You don't know what silence truly is until you've sat in a hospice room with a dying titan. The machines have their own language, a soft beep like a digital heartbeat, the rhythmic sigh of the ventilator. But around my grandfather, Alistair Corelli, there was a deeper quiet, the quiet of spent power. I was 31 years old, the head of structural engineering for the family's development firm, and in that room, I felt like a child holding a blueprint for a sandcastle. He motioned me closer. The smell was medicinal, overlaid with the faint, stubborn scent of his old cologne and the waxy perfume of the lilies my sister Elise sent. His hand, once capable of crushing a whiskey glass to make a point, was a map of blue veins and papery skin. He didn't talk about love or legacy or God. He talked about concrete. Eric, the mix for the foundation at the Barclay Tower. You used a 5% fly ash substitute for stability in water-heavy soil. I was stunned he knew. I did. It increases long-term compressive strength. A ghost of a smile. It also slows the curing time, adds cost. Wilson fought you on it. He said it was an unnecessary expense, that no one would see it. And what did you say? I remembered the argument in Wilson's glass-walled office, my brother's impatient back turned to the skyline. I said foundations aren't for seeing, they're for bearing unseen weight. He gripped my wrist. His strength was shocking, a final surge. That's why it has to be you. They'll give you the house. They'll think it's a joke, a punishment. You take the key, you live there, you bear the weight. You'll understand. He pressed the key into my palm. It was an old iron skeleton key, cold and heavy. Maplecroft isn't a home, Eric. It's a containment vessel. And I've run out of time to monitor the pressure. 2 days later, he was gone, and I was left holding the key to a vessel I didn't understand. The reading of the will was a masterclass in familial avarice, dressed as solemn duty. It was in the same law firm where, as a boy, I had sat coloring while my father and grandfather argued mergers. The air still smelled of lemon polish and ambition. Wilson, older by 8 years, got the crown jewels, the controlling interest in Corelli Munchers, the stock portfolio, the chairmanship. Elise received the liquid assets, the art collection curated by our mother, the Palm Beach and Newport properties, the charitable foundation, beautiful, sociable assets. When it came to me, the lawyer adjusted his glasses. To my grandson, Eric Nardo, Alistair, I leave the Maplecroft estate in its entirety, including all lands and structures within the original 1895 stone boundary walls. A beat of silence. Then Wilson snorted, a short, sharp exhale of pure relief. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. The old man's sense of humor, a glorified fixer-upper. Don't worry, Eric, we'll get it appraised, sell it, and cut you in. You shouldn't be stuck with that albatross.
Elise's pity was silkier. Oh, Eric, all those empty rooms, it's so lonely. We'll handle it for you. Their kindness was a transaction, their assurance a takeover. Then the lawyer read the condition. The bequest is contingent on the beneficiary maintaining primary continuous residence at Maplecroft for a period of not less than 1 calendar year. Absences exceeding 72 hours consecutively shall constitute a breach. Wilson's face darkened. What is this, a joke? It is a legally binding testamentary condition, Mr. Corelli. So he's a prisoner. This is absurd. I sat very still. This wasn't a whim. This was a design. My grandfather was an engineer of human systems, too. He had built a trap, but not for me, for them. He was forcing them to leave me alone with the truth. I moved in on a bleak November day. The house wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was haunted by maintenance, a dripping sound in a distant wall, the groan of ancient pipes, the sheer, oppressive cost of heat. I chose a small bedroom in the old servants' wing. It felt honest. The neglect I experienced wasn't dramatic cruelty. It was the slow, constant drip of disregard. Example, 2 weeks in, the furnace died. A $20,000 replacement. I called Wilson, the keeper of the family funds. Eric, the estate is yours. The operating costs are yours. The estate has no operating income, Wilson. It's a house. Grandfather's instructions were clear. Then get a loan against it, he said, irritation crackling down the line. I could hear the clink of glasses, laughter in the background, a lunch meeting. Figure it out. That's what you do, right? Solve problems. I took the money from my own savings, the money I'd earned from my salary, a salary Wilson set. The silent transaction felt familiar. My labor subsidizing the Corelli image. While my teeth chattered, I explored. The ledger wasn't hidden in some secret compartment. It was in plain sight, on the vast partner's desk in the study, next to a dried-out inkwell. Blackwood Holdings, operational logs. The first entry was May 12, 1946. My grandfather was 24. The war was over. Industry was roaring. And he saw a need, not for building, but for hiding. The entries were clinical. Shipment number B7. Origin, Newark. Contents, degreasing solvents. Tetrachloroethylene. Client, Northeast Tool and Die. Disposition, secure landfall. Landfall. That was the term. It wasn't dumped. It was landed. Buried.
I cross-referenced dates with old microfiche newspapers at the local library. July 1949, mysterious fish kill in Housatonic River tributary. September 1955, cluster of leukemia cases in Milltown prompts state inquiry. October 1962, well water contamination scare in Farming Valley. A pattern emerged from the dry prose, a geography of silence. And the money was staggering. A single 1958 landfall of catalyst sludge paid Blackwood, paid my grandfather, the equivalent of $4 million today. I felt no moral outrage at first, just a cold professional fascination. He had identified a structural flaw in the system, the toxic byproduct of progress, and monetized it. He built a secret parallel infrastructure, and he paid for our shining world with that dark money. The human cost came later. In the library, I found a faded local newspaper from 1971, a small article on page 6. A farmer named Joseph Varsi. His 5-acre parcel, adjacent to what was then just empty Corelli woodland, was condemned by the state after his well tested for unspecified industrial contaminants. He had owned it for 3 generations. He received a settlement from an anonymous environmental trust. He moved to Florida. The photo showed a man in his 60s, face crumpled, standing by a for sale sign. The trust was administered by a law firm I recognized. Our law firm. That's when the weight began to shift from intellectual to physical. This wasn't just a secret, it was a crime scene, and I was living in the evidence locker. The well. It was mentioned with increasing frequency in the later logs. Capacity of the well at 60%. Revised liner specifications for the well. And finally, the last entry, 1987. Final consolidation complete. The well is sealed. Providence secured. Providence, not profit. Providence, as in divine care, the ultimate irony. I had to find it, not just for proof, but to understand the scale, to feel it. This required a different kind of engineering, deception. I called my old college roommate, John, a geologist. I told him a half-truth. I've inherited this old estate. There's a capped-off area, maybe an old septic or storm drain. Before I build a garage, I need to know what's down there. Can you do a discreet GPR scan? No formal reports, just for me. John, bless him, asked no questions. He came on a weekday with one assistant. We dressed it up as a survey for a potential garden expansion. As the ground-penetrating radar unit rolled over the suspicious, concrete-capped area in the West Wood, I watched the screen on his laptop. The top layers showed the concrete, then rubble. Then, about 20 feet down, the scan turned chaotic, then resolved into a perfect grid of dense rectangles. Drums. Stacked in rows like a library of poison. The void space around them was significant, a chamber.
Whistled. Eric, that's not a septic tank. That's a landfill. A professional one by the look of the grid. Those are standard 55-gallon industrial drums. A lot of them. How many? He did some calculations, his face grim. Hundreds, maybe 500-600. My stomach turned to ice. 500 drums. Of what? The ledger had euphemisms. Solvents, catalysts, sludge, residues. Can you tell what's in them? Not from this, but Eric, the concrete cap is newer than the fill. Someone didn't just dump this. They entombed it. This was a long-term operation. You need to call the DEC. This is way above my pay grade. I paid him double his rate and made him sign an NDA. It's family stuff, John. Sensitive. I'll handle it. He left worried, casting long looks back at the house. Now I had the evidence. The ledger was the confession. The GPR scan was the autopsy photo. I sat in the study that night, the silence of the house now screaming. I had the power to detonate my family's world. But a bomb is a blunt instrument. It destroys the bomber too. My grandfather didn't leave me a bomb. He left me a surgical tool. I needed a strategy. The first step was to make myself a non-threat. I leaned into their narrative of poor, quirky Eric. I stopped shaving regularly. I accidentally sent Wilson a rambling email about restoring the estate's original horse stables, complete with cost estimates. He replied with a single line, "Prioritize, Eric." I could imagine him shaking his head, sharing a laugh with Elise about how I was losing it in that big, empty house. Perfect. The second step was to legalize the weapon. I couldn't just have stolen scans and an old book. I needed an official record. Using my professional credentials, I filed a formal Phase 1 environmental site assessment on my own property. It's a standard, dry real estate tool. I hired a reputable, by-the-book firm from 2 towns over. I told them I was considering future development and needed a baseline. When their drill rigs took core samples around the concrete cap, their preliminary findings came back with red flags. Anomalous soil composition, traces of volatile organic compounds, evidence of subsurface disturbance consistent with waste burial. They recommended a Phase 2, a full excavation. I authorized it, writing the check from my own drained account. This was the point of no return. The state's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection would be notified automatically if contamination exceeded thresholds. I was setting the bureaucratic machine in motion. It was slow, it was impersonal, and it was utterly unstoppable.
While the environmentalist worked, I built my digital fortress. Every page of the ledger scanned and encrypted. The GPR data, the Phase 1 report. I linked each Blackwood entry to digitized news archives, health department records, the settlement with Farmer Varsi. I created a timeline so clear a child could follow it. I stored it in 3 encrypted cloud locations and gave the passwords to my lawyer in a sealed letter, with instructions that made my position clear. If I died, or was incapacitated, or was sued by my family, the entire dossier went to the New York Times, the EPA, and the State Attorney General.
I was no longer just the keeper of the secret. I was the architect of its release mechanism, and the trigger would be their own greed. The call came from Wilson. His tone was different, not condescending, but strained. "Eric, we need to talk, face to face, about Maplecroft. There's a situation." My environmental consultants had filed their Phase 2 findings with the state. The notification letters had gone out. Wilson, as the head of the family and a prominent local figure, would have gotten a call from a confused or concerned official. The first tremor had reached him. "Of course," I said, my voice mild. "My treat. The Oak. Thursday at 8. I arrived early. I chose the table. I ordered sparkling water. I watched them enter. Wilson, moving with forced ease, but his eyes were scanning the room like he was looking for exits. Elise, her smile a perfect, tense mask. They sat. The pleasantries were brittle, lasting 30 seconds. Wilson leaned in. "Eric, what in God's name have you done? I got a call from a regulator at the DEEP. They're talking about a significant contaminant release investigation at Maplecroft. They mentioned drums. Drums, Eric." I took a slow sip of water. "I've been doing some renovations. Uncovered some historical issues." "Historical issues?" Elise's whisper was sharp. "They're talking about a Superfund site. Do you know what that will do?" "I have a fairly good idea," I said. I opened my briefcase and slid 2 manila folders toward them. I found grandfather's business records, Blackwood Holdings. The next 10 minutes were a study in disintegration. Wilson's face cycled through confusion, rapid comprehension as he flipped pages, recognition of company names and dates, then a sickly gray pallor. Elise read slower, her hand rising to her throat. She got to the entry about the 1971 settlement with the farmer. This is what paid for my debutante ball?" "Among other things," I replied. Wilson finally looked up, his eyes blazing. "This is a fabrication, a sick fantasy you've concocted because you've gone insane in that house. The original ledger is in a climate-controlled vault. The digital copies are with my attorney. The DEEP has the core sample data showing PCBs in trichloroethylene at 10,000 times the safety limit. The drums are there, Wilson. 500 of them. The well is real. Grandfather's Providence is a toxic waste dump." The silence was absolute. A waiter approached, took one look at us, and retreated. "Why?" Wilson asked, the fight draining from him, replaced by a dawning, horrific understanding of the financial and reputational abyss. "Why would you do this? We're your family. We could have managed this privately. We have resources." "You have resources because of this," I said, my voice low and even. "And for 31 years, your management of me has been to treat me as a resource, a silent, reliable component. You left me alone to deal with this, just like you left me alone to deal with the furnace, the leaks, the silence. So I dealt with it, as a responsible landowner, the full, legal, and public way." Elise found her voice, a desperate clawing thing. "We can fix this. We can buy the property from you. We can hire the best remediation firm, do it quietly." "It's too late for quiet. The state has it now. It's a designated contaminated site. Its value is negative. It will cost millions to clean up, over decades. And the name Corelli will be on every public docket, every remediation notice, every environmental impact statement. The foundation of the family fortune is officially classified as hazardous material. You can't sell that. You can't hide it. You can only live with it." I stood up, dropping my napkin on the table, the final, symbolic gesture. "The weight isn't mine anymore. It's yours. You wanted the spotlight, Wilson. You wanted the social currency, Elise. Now you have it. Every news story, every whisper at the club, every skeptical look from an investor. That's your inheritance from grandfather. I got the house. You got the consequences. I walked out, leaving them in the wreckage. I didn't look back. The revenge wasn't in a shout. It was in the quiet, irrevocable transfer of a lifetime's buried poison onto the shoulders of those who thought they were above it. The aftermath was a public unraveling, played out in business section headlines and society page gossip. Corelli family legacy tainted by toxic secret. Eco-fraud allegations swirl around old money dynasty. Wilson's flagship deal, a waterfront rejuvenation project, fell apart when investors got spooked. The green PR campaign was now a sick joke. Elisa's charity gala had half the usual attendees. The others had scheduling conflicts. They tried to fight. Their lawyers sent threatening letters, alleging I'd defamed my grandfather, that I had mishandled the estate. My lawyer responded by sending them and their lawyers a single PDF, the first 5 pages of the dossier, including the ledger entry for the shipment that coincided with the farmer's poisoned well. The letters stopped.
They tried to cut me off financially, but my salary was a contract. They tried to freeze me out socially, but I'd never been in. I was already an island. The state moved in with earnest, bureaucratic efficiency. Maplecroft's Westwood became a fenced compound of construction trailers, sapling rigs, and guys in hazmat suits. It looked like a disaster movie set on our manicured lawn. The local news did helicopter shots. Through my old contacts, I started my own small independent engineering firm, specializing in structural integrity and ethical site assessment. My first clients were people who'd been burned by cut-corner developers. My selling point was silent, wordless. My name was Corelli, and I was the one who blew the whistle. I represented a perverse kind of trustworthiness. Business was steady. It was mine. I never moved into the main house. I had the small cabin built on clean, tested land. It's simple, modern. The windows look out on the woods, away from the remediation site. Some nights, I sit on the porch. I can hear the generators from the state's operation, a low, distant hum. It's the sound of the poison being slowly, expensively dragged into the light. Wilson and Elise have never contacted me again. The family is shattered. But I realize now it was always shattered. It was just held together by the glossy, pressurized film of money and secrets. I didn't break it. I just released the pressure. My grandfather's final lesson wasn't about bearing weight. It was about knowing when the structure is so fundamentally compromised that the only ethical, the only strategic move is controlled demolition. You evacuate, you cordon off the area, you bring in the experts, and you reduce it to rebel so you can clear the site and pour new footings. They left me with the keys to the condemned building, so I called in the inspectors. I followed the code, and I condemned their world. Now the silence around me is clean. It's not the silence of being overlooked. It's the silence of a site after the wrecking ball has swung. The dust has settled, the air is clear. And for the first time, I can see all the way to the horizon. The foundation I pour now will be my own. The structural flaw has been identified, the collapse was contained. The new construction is underway.